the thing that happened with the angel was when I went to get checked out, they had done some blood and what they normally do, and they called me back in a week, and they just flat told me the blood shows that your child is severely deformed, you know, and retarded, and we need to talk to you, we need to do an ultrasound. And in the back of my mind, I had such peace about it because I was already kind of expecting God to give me another child. And when I had a godmom that I trusted in all the time, I told her, I said, hey, pray for me, I really don't want another baby. And she called me back in 5 minutes later and she said, you're gonna have another baby, it's a girl, and she's a life giver. And so I kind of had that in my heart, and I knew she wasn't wrong because she was always right about everything concerning me. So I went on in my life, and when I got the call that they wanted to do an extensive ultrasound, I just went in, and I was about 5.5 months pregnant. And they were just prodding and going over, and it just seemed like forever, you know, for them to even talk to me or communicate with me. But the lady came in and she said, your child really has a lot of issues and we need you to have an abortion. You know, she didn't ask me if I wanted to. She said, we need you to have an abortion. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do that. And she said, well, why wouldn't you do that? She said, this child is gonna be severely retarded, and if you don't do it, you're gonna watch her die a horrible death once she's born. And I said, what do you mean a horrible death? She said, well, she might last 2 weeks, you know. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, but what's going on with my body is God's business. And I said, and if she's born deformed, we'll deal with it then. And so she said, okay. And they just kept on with the ultrasound. And a few minutes later, she hit me again and she said, you know, you need to do this. She said, we will roll you down right now and you won't feel a thing. And I said, I won't feel a thing. I said, what about that life inside of me? That baby will feel something. And she said, well, we can get it done and taken care of. And she said, because if you don't do it, you will see a horrible thing happen, you know. And I said, like I said, I made up my mind. I am not taking the life of this child. And so she went out of the room, and then a doctor came in who I didn't know who he was. And he said, well, Mrs. Eason, we have, you know, heard what you decided, and I respect your decision. I wouldn't advise it, but okay. And so after I got out of there, I got a new doctor. He gave me nothing but positive feedback. I never ever heard anything bad said about my baby. She was born healthy and whole, you know, and she was a little girl. And I went home the very next day with her. And she's an honor roll student today. She's 14. So, you know, just because they say something's wrong with you, your baby inside, you don't have to believe it.